Every age has its stories of decline. Empires rise and crumble. Kingdoms flourish and fade. But what happens when a republic, a government of laws, assemblies, checks, and balances, begins to tear itself apart from within? Today, we turn to the story of Rome in the last century before Christ. It is a story filled with abominations, betrayal, civil war, and the slow erosion of political norms. It is the story of how the Roman Republic, once the most stable political system in the Mediterranean world, collapsed into dictatorship. And when we finish the story, we'll ask the harder question: what lesson does this have for us today? Because history doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. Our story begins in the year 133 BCE. Rome is powerful, the greatest power in the Mediterranean world. Carthage has been destroyed. Greece has been conquered. Wealth pours into the city. But under the marble and triumphal processions, something is breaking. The Roman Republic was built on farmers and citizen soldiers. These men owned the land, fought in the legions, and returned to their farms. But after years of conquest, many farmers were bankrupt. Their land was bought by wealthy elites, who turned small farms into massive estates, worked not by Romans, but by slaves captured in war. This created a new kind of crisis: wealth inequality. Enter Tiberius Gracchus. A young nobleman, Tiberius was elected tribune of the plebs, a position meant to protect ordinary citizens. He proposed a radical reform to redistribute public land back to the poor. For him, this was about saving Rome's traditional way of life. For his enemies, it was an attack on their wealth and power. Tiberius pushed this law through, bypassing the Senate. The elites were outraged. They accused him of breaking tradition, of appealing directly to the masses. In the end, they did something unthinkable. During an assembly, a group of senators clubbed him to death with wooden chairs. For the first time in centuries, political violence had entered Roman politics. And once that door was open, it would never close again. Tiberius's brother, Gaius Gracchus, took up the cause. He expanded reforms: cheap grain for the poor, colonies for the landless citizens, new rights for allies of Rome. But the Senate resisted. They declared him an enemy of the state. And in 121 BCE, the Roman government, for the first time, used a new emergency decree, the Senatus Consultium Ultimatum, the final decree of the Senate. It allowed magistrates to protect the state by any means necessary. In plain words, it legalized political murder. Gaius was hunted, cornered on the Aventine Hill. He ordered a servant to kill him before the Senate's men could. His body was thrown into the Tiber. Thousands of his supporters were slaughtered. The message was clear: reformers who threatened the elite would die. The Republic was no longer a government of debate. It was a system where violence settled disputes. The next great rupture came not from the poor, but from the military. Gaius Marius, a general of humble birth, rose to prominence by defeating foreign enemies. He introduced a key innovation. He allowed landless men to join the army. These soldiers depended on their generals, not the Senate, for land and rewards. For the first time, Roman legions began to swear loyalty not just to Rome, but to the man who led them. Marius' success made him wildly popular, but it also set the stage for chaos. He clashed with another general, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, over who should command the lucrative war against King Mithridates in the east. In 1888 BCE, in a shocking move, Sulla marched his army into Rome itself, the first time a Roman general had used his soldiers against the capital. Streets ran with blood. Rome had crossed another line. The army was now a weapon of political struggles. Sulla defeated his enemies and declared himself dictator. Not the old 6-month emergency role, but with no time limit. He carried out bloody purges, publishing lists of enemies whose lives and property were forfeit. Thousands were killed. And yet, when his reign was secured, he did something unexpected. He retired, handing power back to the Senate. But the precedent had been set. Dictatorship was now an option. The Republic's norms were crumbling. After Sulla's death, 2 men rose to dominance in Rome. Pompey the Great, a brilliant general who defeated pirates and conquered vast territories. Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, who had crushed the slave revolt of Spartacus. In 70 BCE, they were elected consuls. They restored the rights of the tribunes and undid some of Sulla's harsh measures. But rivalry burned. Each sought glory. Rome was now governed not by laws, but by the ambition of powerful men. Into this world stepped Gaius Julius Caesar. Young, charming, ambitious, Caesar rose through the ranks of politics. In 60 BCE, he brokered a secret alliance with Pompey and Crassus, the first triumvirate. Together, they controlled Rome. Caesar gained command in Gaul, where he waged a brutal and brilliant conquest. For nearly a decade, he expanded Rome's territory and grew rich. His soldiers adored him. He wrote reports, his famous commentaries, that made him a hero to the Roman people. But success breeds fear. Senators worried he would march his army into Rome, just as Sulla had. In 49 BCE, the Senate ordered Caesar to disband his army and return as a private citizen. If he obeyed, his enemies would destroy him. Instead, Caesar made a fateful choice. At the small river Rubicon, he told his men, "The die is cast." He marched into Italy with his legions. Pompey fled east. Civil war had begun. Caesar pursued Pompey across the Mediterranean, defeating him at Pharsalus. Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was murdered. Caesar became master of Rome. He declared himself dictator for life. To some, he was a savior, reforming debt, expanding citizenship, creating public works. To others, he was a tyrant. On the Isles of March, 44 BCE, senators, led by Brutus and Gracchus, struck him down at a meeting. They thought they had saved the Republic. Instead, they unleashed chaos. Caesar's death did not restore the Republic. His supporters rallied behind his adoptive heir, Octavian, the future Augustus, and his ally, Mark Antony. After more civil wars, Octavian emerged as victor. In 27 BCE, he declared the restoration of the Republic. But in truth, he held supreme power as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. The Republic was gone. Rome's Republic did not fall in one night. It crumbled over centuries. Economic equality widened the gap between rich and poor. Political violence replaced debate. Generals commanded personal loyalty from their armies, undermining citizen control. Norms and traditions were broken again and again until laws meant nothing. Ambition and popularism drove leaders to seek personal power above all else. By the time Augustus ruled, people welcomed stability, even at the cost of their liberty. Let's take a step back, though. Why does this matter to us living almost 2,000 years later? because many of the same pressures that tore apart the Roman Republic are happening today. We see massive inequality. Just as the Roman farmers were displaced by slave-run estates, today's automation, globalization, and wealth concentration creates divides between rich elites and struggling workers. We also see that there's mass polarization. Romans divided into two political parties, unable to compromise. Today, political parties in many democracies, mostly the US, are more polarized than ever. They also erased the norms. Romans used violence. They broke traditions and ignored constitutional limits. Today, we see leaders bending or bypassing norms, testing the strength of institutions. We see that personal loyalty comes over institution. Roman soldiers followed generals, not the Senate. Today, we see worrying signs that political figures demand personal loyalty above loyalty to law or country. And, worst of all, the strongman temptation. In Rome, people grew tired of chaos and embraced Augustus' order. In our own time, frustration with gridlock can fuel support for leaders who promise to bypass the system. The story of Rome warns us. Republics do not always fall in a single blow. They erode, bit by bit, until one day people wake up and realize the Republic is gone. The only thing left is dictatorship. The fall of the Roman Republic is not just ancient history, it's a mirror. When we hear politicians demonizing their opponents, when institutions weaken, when violence becomes part of politics, when citizens trade liberty for security, Rome whispers to us across centuries. Its lesson is clear. A republic is fragile. It requires compromise, respect for law, and above all, citizens willing to defend it. If we forget that, we may find ourselves, like the Romans, watching the slow death of a republic we thought would last forever. The Continuum is part of the Political Besties Network, a trio of 3 shows: Tubernet Host, It Takes a Village, and The Continuum. Please listen to all of them. Thank you.